Hello, this is the Conquering Hill podcast, and I'm your host, Nicholas Gagnier. I have a very special guest today, Tom Ziemann. Tom Ziemann is a spiritual mentor with over 42 years of extensive non secular research and meditative practices. Tom delivers engaging, uplifting lectures on spirituality, meditation, relationships, life purpose, and anger management. Tom has written three acclaimed books: The Department of Zenitation, A Layman's Guide to Making Spirituality Work in Real Life, Taming the Anger Dragon, From Pissed Off to Peaceful. By the way, I love that title. And Creating the Relationship of Your Dreams, How to Manifest It from Fantasy to Reality. All of these books are available on Amazon.com. He's also the proud father of two brilliant daughters, and he had married his best friend and a loving cat owner of 7 cats. Wow. Well, Tom, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I truly appreciate it. Do me a favor and explain to the audience who you are and how has this life path evolved to where you are right now.
That was such a wonderful introduction. I wonder if you would just let me go home right now and we'll just offer a free ebook to anybody who's watching out there. Well, thank you, Nicholas, for having me on here. I had the pleasure of listening to a previous podcast with an amazing lady, sports. She sounded like a newscaster announcer. So I go, wow, I better bring my A game. And in the words of the great John Lennon, I hope I pass the audition. So, in answer to your question, on my 60 years on terra firma here, I can tell you one thing. The more I learn, the more I realize how I know nothing really about anything. And I always start out my interviews by thanking you, the host, for allowing me, ingratiating me to come on and share some ideas. And when I share ideas, if you listen to anything I've ever done, any of my YouTubes, any of my interviews, I always say one thing is that anything I share today, I'm not saying I'm right. I never do. I never have. What I am saying is these ideas are right for me. And if you vehemently disagree with the things that I bring up today, you know what? That's good. And why is it good? It's good because you know you. You have an idea of what works for you. The world is too complex to have just one way or the highway. My first getting into your question of how did I get into all this? My catalyst, my amazing first guru back in my formative days was Johnny Norman, aka Anan. He was a Taoist master, very similar to Buddhism, but and a lot of wonderful Eastern ideas. And I was a troubled youth. I was the smallest kid with the biggest mouth who always had something to prove to someone, who used to get my butt kicked all the time. And I was working at this Nautilus. Nautilus was the big thing back in the 80s. You might remember it. And I was a Nautilus instructor. I mean, I had a lot of chutzpah, but I had like no knowledge about anything. Yeah, I could teach, no, I could instruct Nautilus machines. And Johnny came in there and he came in for a tour. He's not that tall of a guy. I mean, I'm height challenged if you've seen me. Today being St. Patty's Day, I could resemble a leprechaun. So you stand next to this guy, but he was built like a refrigerator, huge, and his face. He looked kind of like a lion. I mean, he looked long hair and he laughed. He kind of roared, and he was a Leo too, of all crazy things. And we had a small chat, and I said, "What do you do?" He said, "Well, I'm a counselor for the Chicago, this is back in Chicago where I lived, right?" And he said, I am a counselor for Chicago public schools." And I said, "Oh, well, that's cool. I'm trying to be professional." And but then he really piqued my interest, and he goes, "But what I love to do," he goes, "is I have a martial arts studio, a dojo." And all of a sudden, my eyes are perked up, and I'm like just chomping at the bit to hear about him. And I said, "Well, what do you teach?" He says, "I teach Shaolin Kung Fu." And all of a sudden, my heart drops, right? Because I've been a David Carradine fan for years, and I've always been wanting to learn martial arts. Yeah, I'd read a few books and could do a few things, and I got a big mouth. back from Chicago, but I really knew nothing. And I just burst out and said, "Oh my God, I would love to come. When can I, do you have lessons?" He goes, "What are you doing tonight?" And I was blown away. And I said, "I guess I'm coming." And I went to his studio virtually every, probably at least 3 or 4 days a week until I went in the Navy. And it was life changing. And why I bring this up is what Anon, Johnny Norman, loved about American martial arts is he loved the forms. He loved the beauty of them, the hard forms like Taekwondo and Karate, the soft forms like Tai Chi. But what he said is he felt they all lacked, as far as what he was concerned, is they all lacked the meditative background, meaning that they didn't teach the meditative background. What he did, every class that you did with him, whether you were doing, the chit forms or whether you were just doing katas or just working out, he always ended with a different type of meditation. He knew 400. I mean, I'm lucky if I mean I've been teaching satsang for years, and I'm lucky if I can do five with eloquence. He knew all these, and that was the start. The greatest lessons that he ever taught me is question everything, and more importantly, of why you believe you think you know something is understand why you believe it. If, for example, some people say, "Well, I'm not going to talk politics here," but some people say, "Well, I'm a Republican." Okay, great. Well, why? My parents were Republican. Was that really a reason? Do you follow all the ideas that? And there's nothing wrong with it, as long as you know who you are. So that was his point, and he knew I was getting ready to, when I was going to the Navy, that I was going to be traveling to countries like Hong Kong, Japan, Philippines. And he said, "I know you want to go in all the martial arts studios, Tom." He goes, "But you gotta go to the temples." He goes, "You're going to have difficulty finding people who speak English, but they'll be there." He goes, "Ask questions and don't act like a know-it-all." He goes, "I know you." And he presented me with this beautiful little leather binder and a pen. And I'm looking at it, and he goes, "And you're going to take copious notes, and you're going to write neatly. And I've seen your handwriting, which is still hideous
Mhm.
today." So I started taking notes, and I started asking questions. And my first book, The Department of Sanitation, really encompassed where that started, Nicholas. Where that was all these notes and all the books and all the studies. Because his thing was that he wanted you to know something about everything, whether it was quantum physics, whether it was philosophy, whether it was art, whether it was gymnastics, whatever, train locomotive principles. He didn't care. And he said, and no, ignorance was no excuse. Asking the intelligent question was why. And listen and shut your mouth, Tom. So that was it. So 32 years of studying the questions really that I'm going to discuss today. What I wanted to do, rather than just talk about me today, is really talk with the listeners and give them, in my opinion, the 10 most life changing questions that I've ever pondered, written about, and thought about. Once I've thought about these, it's like something miraculously happened once I was willing to work on them. The, the thing about podcasts like this is they give us a lot of inspiration and we're really excited, and the beta endorphins are released and the dopamine. But then what happens a couple days later? And like, who motivates the motivator, Nicholas? How do you keep that going? So it's your why. And you've studied goals extensively. I've seen your webpage. You know what success is. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. You are working towards the idea, according to Napoleon Hill, you're a success. So that's the idea about this. What's the WIFM for you? What's in it for you? How are you going to motivate yourself after the initial enthusiasm? What did Einstein say? That when someone asked him about being a genius, he said genius was 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. That's what 32 years took me to have my first book published, that Department of Sanitation. I didn't have the confidence. I didn't know if it was going to be good enough. And the editing is the most expensive part I found in any book. And there was my idea. The name of the book was going to be 365 days of Zen, right? And have one Quran or one saying for every day. And when I got to 178 chapters and the book was 568 pages long, I realized it had to be shortened. I mean, I took 10,000 quotes initially, and I took my favorite thousand and I put those in for every chapter. Just easy stuff to read. I asked Anon, I said, he was giving me books to read. He had me read the Tao Te Ching. He had me read, oh my God, I could give you a list if I had thought about, I was going to tell you what books, but, and he made me read. He goes, "Do you have a library card?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Do you use it?" I go, So he made me go down and get books, right? And he would test me when I'd come into class and he'd ask me questions to see if I was reading them. After about 3 months, and you couldn't piss this guy off. I would try to ask him questions and I would try to flood. He would never get irritated with me. In fact, he taught me a great deal about patience. I'm not a patient guy, still not to this day. You could ask my wife, but he uh, he asked me a question, and this is the only time I ever saw him not flabbergasted, but kind of taken aback. Well, Tom, you've read all these books I've been suggesting. What do you think? I said, they're okay. His eyes got as big as saucers. It was that look that he gave me when I wasn't doing the chit forms right, not paying attention. He goes, just all right. What do you mean? Explain it to me. I said, well, they're great. They're giving me great ideas, right? But I haven't found the book. I haven't found the one book that I could go to. I could meditate on it and I could open it to any page and my answer would be there. And he laughed. Oh, well, he goes, the reason is simple. I'm listening, right? He goes, you haven't written it yet. Wow. This man
Mm.
gave me, I never thought in a million years. I come from, from a working man's background. My dad's a pipe fitter. My mom's was a housewife. They definitely not the intellectual people, good folks, but not, and he gave me confidence. So getting back to the book, that's when I finally got down to brass tacks. And after 32 years, the other books came a lot easier after that because at this point I had done the due diligence. So without further ado, without
Very
boring our
nice. Well, let me just
audience
stop you
more,
right there because when you did mention question everything, I looked down to my tattoo that says on one side of my arm question, on the other side of the arm everything. A volunteer riding his bicycle from Guatemala down to Panama. This Canadian guy. He gave me a tattoo with the poking style. You
oh,
know, clean needle, didn't hurt at all. But yeah, I have a question everything tattoo on my right arm. So very interesting you said that. But yeah, without further ado, let's discuss the 10 life changing questions. What do you got?
I'm so glad you asked. I don't got anything really. It's like, and it's funny. These questions, it would be my best guesstimation that the answers that we would give, that we think we have at 20, can be dramatically changed when you're 30,
Of
and then
course.
when you're 40. When I was a young man of 17, I thought my father was such an ignorant fool, and I called him that. But by the time I turned 30, I couldn't believe how much he learned. So it's that same idea. We cannot step in the same river twice. And your goals and those things are going to be evolving
Hmm.
constantly if we're on a path. And stuff that would serve us when we were 20 and 30. You look like a young man. You look like you're about 25. I know you might be a little bit older than
Yeah,
that.
right. I wish
But
I wish I
I'll
was, but
bet,
you know what? I was. I learned a lot in the last 15 years. We'll just say that.
and I still know, you know what? I still have so much to go. I'm so grateful for people like you who will help educate me and with the peoples that you know. But hey, onward here. Pull up my questions here. So the questions I'm gonna ask, you don't have to ask to answer, Nicholas. These are really for you to think. If you want to add them, the audience always gains by hearing what other people have to say. But I'm not going to put your feet to the fire. But these are just things to ponder. We'll spend a couple of minutes on each of these, and please interact. I don't mean to be taking the floor too much. I really
No worries,
need
no
your
worries. I
need your
invited
help.
you on this show.
You're so very kind, and thank you. So the first question: Do I hear that drum solo? Blah, blah, blah. Why are you here?
That is
Why?
the age-old question, right?
It
Why are we
is.
here?
Why are you here? What is your life purpose? I didn't ask you that before the show, but really that's when I'm speaking to people, and if I have a group that I can talk to, and we haven't had too much adult beverages at this point, but sometimes that can be fun, and that's the second part of this. But why are you here? What is your, and it leads into the second part, which I'm going to tie these both together. What is your life purpose? And you should be able to answer that if you've really pondered it in 10 words or less. This has a lot to do with once you figure that out, I promise you, your life inexorably changes if, and here's the if part. Here's the quantifier is that if you're willing to work for it. Again, it's that 1% inspiration. Hey, I figured out why I'm here. In the next 2 days, oh man, how do I get motivated to do it? When you were creating the Stop Thought
Sour
Hotel,
sop? Mhm.
thank you. Um, and that's a whole nother podcast where you could have someone interview you, the amazing things you've been able to do where you're actually recording from right now. And that's in Panama,
Mhm.
outside of there, a hostel. Um, I don't know if you had that burning desire to do it, but you did it, and you kept yourself going and motivating. So
Mhm.
this is going to tie into this question: what is your life purpose? There's no right or wrong answers, and one way to figure out what it is, what brings you joy. So here's a question for you, Mr. Nicholas. Can you describe the difference between joy and happiness?
Well, in my opinion, the happiness it comes and goes too, right? To actually hold on to something and be happy consistently is not easy. But to have joy, to feel great about something, to be joyful about maybe not necessarily about what I'm doing, is about how's my family? How's my wife doing today? How are my children doing today? Can I am I seeing them grow and become better every single day alongside myself or my wife? I think for me, joy is actually, in my opinion at least, is a longer duration of time of obtaining happiness, right? Because happiness, we all want to be happy, and but we feel all the emotions all the time, right? But to be able to actually, bottle that happiness up and transform it, to for a life for your life purpose, to use it as a catalyst to keep working hard and trying to bottle it all in, to use as a positive fuel, it's not always easy, right? Because you just mentioned it, having the ability to work, to be motivated for a couple days here or there, then you kind of lose that edge. And going back to when I first started building the Soursop Hostel, when I realized my dream, when I fell down laughing when I discovered what the possibility of soursop can do for fighting various ailments or fighting cancer, I didn't believe. How could I possibly have the cure for cancer on my land? So that spurred the idea, the dream to build this hostel. But the main goal was to spend my life with my daughter at the time, and nothing, absolutely nothing stopped me, and I had all the motivation in the world at that time. Maybe now, I'm motivated. Obviously, starting a new podcast is one thing, but for whatever reason, there was nothing. There before that, and up until this point, there had been no other motivation quite like that, where I just felt that was my life purpose, to build the Soursop Hostel, to share the fruits and the vegetables and medicinal plants from our land to others, to educate people about the how it's, if you want to get down to medicine. And even though I don't know much, I'm not claiming that I do, but there is, and it seems like an infinite amount of knowledge here that people can tap into for natural medicine. So it does all come together. Happiness and joy, they're similar, but they're not completely one.
I love that, and that's just one question, and look at the different the variations that you pulled into it. It's like it's a fast it's a jewel that can shine from many different facets in 37 different lights. That was one question. So I like I liked everything that you said about that. My and your nothing you said was incorrect. The difference for me for happiness and joy. I mean, you said it eloquently in the beginning. Happiness is fleeting; it will come and go. There's a great author who once said that, and she said that life is great, and then it's crap, and then it's wonderful again, and then there's a setback, and then it's great, and that's what it is. So happiness is fleeting. Now, joy, while it's been confused with happiness for many, many years, joy is much more rare. Joy, happiness is typically what makes us happy, and joy, you said it, is what is happening with your family. That eternal joy. You talk in a lot of monotheistic religions, such as Christianity and Judaism and Islam. They talk a lot about joy. I don't hear a lot of songs about happiness in there. Not to say that that won't make you happy, but it's about the joy. It's coming in. I like the thought, and this is not going to be a religious conversation here, but when I talk about force, source, God, whatever you want to call it, I don't care what you call it, nature, I feel it. When I look out in a field and I see a cow, or if I live out in the country, so I'm way up here, and I live all around farms. If I see some horses or I see some alpacas out there, my heart fills up. Maybe when you see where you live and you see this amazing fruit that cures cancer and stuff, that to me is tapping into that source. Like may the force be with you, Luke. That to me is the closest, and that is the closest that I get to joy. So figuring out that joy, where this is all going on here. Did you want to say something? I see you looking at me.
No, 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 no. Keep
Am
going.
I okay? So see where this all ties in. You're going to be able to figure out your life purpose once you figure out what brings you joy or brings you happiness. And then it doesn't matter. Don't worry if you think it's going to cost money. Don't worry about that. Work on going for your goal. And that goal setting is a whole nother podcast on here. I'm going to move on onto this. Next questions. Those were the first two. We tied them into one. What do you hope to be remembered for, Nicholas? This is also
Well,
for this is also for our
yeah,
audience too. So these are the
yeah.
questions. What do you hope to be remembered
In
for?
my opinion, well, it's all about leaving a legacy. Les Brown said it perfectly. Leave a legacy. So that's one of the main reasons why I did publish my fourth book, but especially the first three, was for years from now, my great grandkids, my great great grandkids, to actually look back and hold something and look at, hey, my great great grandfather wrote this. Let me learn about him. Now we're obviously in a digital age and things can get lost pretty easily. Things can get turned on, turned off, but to actually have something tangible, something physical, um, a book, a story about myself, this hostel, my family. That is one of the reasons why I wrote all those books. But my life, to leave a legacy. Now, the Sour South Hostel, this place came from nothing, right? There was it was a jungle in a sense. It was a small piece of brush jungle where I had to clean up a little bit, and I decided to leave the soursop tree because it was the biggest tree in the small piece of land that I had. But I also knew there was some benefits to it. I wasn't quite familiar with it at the time, but you know, this came from nothing, and I'm proud to have built something from the ground up, with some hard work, some dedication, which really stemmed from the most difficult point in my life, loss, right, or the feeling of I will never be able to raise my daughter. She was only 4 years old at the time. She needs her father. I need to be there for her, and that's where the momentum was like fire. Nothing could stop me. Nothing could stop me. All I thought about. So when I bring it back to the legacy, this soursop hostel is my legacy now. Whether I never created this, I never built this for the purpose of becoming very rich or a millionaire. That was never the reason, and it shows because we do okay some months, and some months no one's here, which is still our home. We're still living the life we want. We're still living from the earth as much as we can, and this hostel is clearly my legacy for sure.
You just see it's a burning desire that you had to make it happen. You didn't know how it was going to happen, and then you realize how important it was for you. And that can absolutely be tied into your life purpose and what joy that it brings. Okay, question number 4, and I think you already answered this one, just what you just said. And I will ask people not to say that they're children when they answer this, okay? And you'll understand it when I read the question, which is, what is the most important accomplishment thus far in your life? What's your most important accomplishment? That will change. Let's say that you just graduated with your PhD from Harvard, and let's say you're 25 years old. And then when you're 40, you have other things that come up. Your practice. You might even be financially successful, and you've got your name on a building if that's important to you. That might be. So these are going to change. But the fact is that focus on your most important accomplishment. It's going to give you satisfaction. It's going to help alleviate that angst that still most people will still feel in their life. I'm a huge Trekkie. I'm a Trekkie geek. And Spock, and I'll paraphrase this, one of my favorite characters. He made a point that has stuck with me for, I don't know, since the '60s, is that we know what we know we want something. We just don't know what it is that we want. And I thought that was so profound. And still 60 years later, it's still, or not 60 years later, I'm 60 years now, but all these years later, it still resonates very big with me. So the figuring out what that is, it'll go well into your life for adding satisfaction and doing that. Next question number 5. What is the personal relationship with yourself? How do you talk to yourself?
Mm.
Wanna,
Well,
you wanna,
sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. And I mean, let's be real, let's be honest, right? So sometimes I have to light the fire underneath my own ass, right? I have to give myself some tough love. I mean, I pat myself on my back occasionally. Yes, maybe not enough because I'm busy, like maybe I don't take stock in what we've already accomplished here. Obviously, I'm in it, I'm living it every day, and it's a continuous process. It's always evolving with little small projects we're doing and all these things. But that is a very good question. How do we treat ourselves? How do we talk to ourselves? I am never putting myself down. I don't put myself down. No, I never go there. But I always tell myself I can do better. You can do better than that, Nick. Get your shit together. You can do better than that. What the hell is that? Or even my wife. I'll think like, my wife always says, is that A+? Nick, is that A+ right there, or no? And I take that into account as well too. Like she's right. Did I just give 100% on that, or did I not? Right. So talking to myself, or treating myself a certain way, I always treat myself obviously with respect. But I never talk to myself down. Right. But I do try to put myself in its place when it's needed, for sure.
that's a very healthy thing that you said. Unfortunately, there's millions of people in the world who, if they talked to their friends the way that they talk to themselves, they get a black eye. They would not have people
Mm.
in their life. That does no good. But keeping yourself accountable, that's another thing too. So it's just how do you meter out that intensity? I'm an intense person. I had to tame my anger dragon. I'm a recovering angerholic, for lack of a better thing. My wife has helped me with that. You just mentioned, you're a great soulmate and your partner, and mine helps me too to see the bigger picture. The question that can help me, and this all goes back into talking to yourself, is taking a breath, which is one of the most important spiritual lessons you can ever do. There's a great doctor, one of my great friends, Dr. John Shinnener, who helps men. He does the Evolved Caveman podcast. He's one of the brightest anger doctors on the planet, next to Christian Conti. I mean, I put these guys on the same level. And we were doing an interview, and I told him about the 444 method that Johnny Norman told me, and I was all pounding my chest. And this is a gift here. So if you're listening, when we're pissed off, let's talk about energy and where it flows. Let's become Eastern philosophies into Hinduism. It starts at the Shoshona at the base of the spine, and it goes in a circle. It starts from the spine, it comes all the way up to the crown chakra, down into Dantian, as Johnny would say. So it's in a circle. When we're pissed off, that energy is fluctuating wildly. Think of like if you're in an operating room and you're watching that beep, it's going insane. With our breath, I know this sounds so simple and so crazy and so easy. We can control our feelings. We can actually slow our heart rates if we become adept at it in practice. So the thing that has helped me the most is with breath is controlling my anger and my intensity. And it's the 444, and I'd like to share it. It's real easy. It's we breathe in on four. We haven't been taught how to breathe. Isn't that crazy?
Hmm.
There's so many things they don't teach these days, like even how to do your bank book. They don't teach this stuff, but this one's important. This has been taught thousands and thousands of years. I mean, even the Mesopotamians were talking about this 10,000 years ago, and well before that. We breathe. We breathe down into our dantian. Dantian is about 1 inch below the navel to the left. People, you've heard of navel contemplation. We take it down on four. We can do this. Take it down on four. We hold for four. Now, I used to say, let it out on four. And he goes, no, Tom. He became Yoda. He goes, Tom, we must let go on 12. So letting it out really slow. That one exercise, and it allowed me right there to ask myself right there on the spot, how important is this? Is this going to matter in 5 years? Can I come out of this intensity of the 1 second? And I wish I could remind myself, because sometimes you don't think of the things that you already know that you should do. So right there, that little breath exercise, if you don't get anything else from this, and again, I'm not saying it's right, but it is right for me, and it's helped millions of people. So there's that. Did you want to add anything to that before we move on to question 6, my dear man?
Well, I'm gonna start practicing that for sure. Thank you for sharing that, Tom.
Dr. John Shinnener, if you ever get a chance to get him on your program, he's the man. I love the guy. Next. Now this is the one that when I want to kind of shock. I like to shock people in a good way. And this question, when I ask it, I'll get some people who actually get incensed with me, and their eyes get big. And how dare you ask that question? Is the look. Some people get angry, and I can't even use the vernacular that I've heard. Some people look like a doe in a headlight when I ask this, and some people can't even answer this question. But I'll ask you. You ready?
Yeah, go for it.
Do you love yourself more than anyone or anything?
No,
Wow.
only because I love my children more than I do. Than I love myself. Now, granted, I love myself, but like I would give my life for all my children and my wife in an instant, right? I would freaking jump on that grenade. I would save them from drowning, and I'd go under if I had to. I would do whatever hell it took for them to continue living on. So that that's what I get. That's where I'm at. Like if there's a choice between one of them or me to go on, I want them to go on. I I have, I'm turning 40 at the end of the month. I think I've accomplished a lot. I know I have a lot more to do. I'm very proud of some of the things I've been able to do and experience throughout my life. Um, but if that would be an easy decision for myself.
Well, let's address this. It's beyond admirable for what you said about your family, and I would expect that most people that have a loving relationship with their family and their kids, they'd feel the same exact way. But that wasn't the question in there. So let's think about this again.
Yeah, throw it
Why
back at
can't
me.
you? Why can't you do both? Why
Mm,
can't you give yourself? Here's the thing: you're never going to get the love from anybody else that only you or Source can give yourself. Just my opinion. Now, I'll back this up. You've been on an airplane before. I'm sure you did not walk to Panama.
true.
Virtually every American airline that I float on, not American, but Southwest and Alaska, they all have the same vernacular when you get on the plane. And they have the same flight attendants. I'd be showing my age if I said stewardess, right? And they do the same dog and pony show. And they use this, it's the same spiel every time that half the people don't listen to. Okay, so when they say that there might be a loss of cabin air pressure, I'm
Mm,
not using exact vernacular, they are, and the mask comes down, what do they tell you to do? Do they tell you to put it on your kids first? No.
right, right.
Do they
It's
tell
funny
you to
because
put it on the old folks that are sitting next to you, or if you're sitting like in the place where the door is that you have to help people? No, you're putting it on you first because how can you possibly help them unless you're helping you
without
first? People have
right.
right. There's people like they're afraid to give themselves that love
Right.
that they've always been seeking. This right here
You
was one of those epiphany moments,
no,
and
I'm sorry, I just had this conversation with my wife. She used that exact same example about loving yourself. You have to love yourself before, and she used the same analogy as losing cabin pressure.
doesn't
Incredible.
mean that you don't love your kids more. But I am telling you,
Right.
once you
No,
can get to
you
that
have
point,
a strong point there.
you're like, hey, your wife's smart. I'd look, she's uh, behind every great man is
I'm
an
very
even
lucky.
greater woman, right?
Yeah, yeah.
All
She's
right.
my I say she's my better, 0.75.
She probably loves this. All right, fabulous. We're getting down through this, and we're doing great on time here. Number 7, and this is a tough one for a lot of people. Have you allowed yourself to feel fully happy in your life?
I think that's different for everyone, right? What does happiness look for every single person?
Right. This is just for
That's
anybody who's listening. Think about this, and you know
right.
what?
Think about that
Be
one.
honest with yourself. We're not, no one's judging you on this, but there's a wisdom behind each one of these questions. It's number one to have you think about how what it works for you and to be honest because unless you can see and this has nothing to do about being negative on anything but the great lesson Anon Johnny Norman taught me and these lessons still follow me to this day. Everyone needs a mentor that's special in their life with them if they can. Is that he said unless you're willing to see yourself in an unflattering light you will never grow. And unless you can examine, I mean, the old saying was the unexamined life isn't worth listening. Well, that really applies to us right now. To know why we think the way we do, why we believe. Why haven't we allowed ourselves to love? Does it mean that, we are to love ourselves more? Have we been taught that that's a bad thing? Maybe. I can't answer that. Only you can. But to allow more love in your life is only going to transmute and to become more efficacious in all the relationships in your life. They're all going to grow. It really starts from within. That relationship you have with that I inside, and not to be confused with the mind and who you are. The mind, the subconscious, and that's a whole nother podcast in itself. They make great servants. I talk about the anger dragon. There's another great mentor I had named Dr. Steve McSwain, and he's a wonderful Christian theologian, but he's really cool because he likes Buddhism. I was on his podcast, and he had his little Buddha that I sent him in his room. He's a wonderful man. And I asked him, I said, hey, can you do a review of my book? Because he loved the first one, and he wasn't sure about the second one. And in fact, what he said was this, and I loved his review. And when I talk about taming the anger dragon, and I'll paraphrase here, and he says, Tom, he says, the truth is that we're all we're all fighting a lot of dragons. We have a lot of dragons within us, and I hadn't thought about that. And I thought that's wonderful. We've got the fear dragon, the worry dragon, the anger dragon, which has been, my downfall, which I'm still trying to get in control. But another great, wonderful mentor I've had, Edie Weinstein, who's helped me, who's been co-authored of my books as well. When I would say I'm going to slay this dragon, she goes, "No, Tom." And other people have said it too. You want to make that dragon your friend. The anger that we have within, it's there actually to protect us. It's that fight or flight syndrome that we've carried in our DNA for years. Let's say we're in the cave and Smilodon, the saber-toothed tiger, is coming by and it's fight or flight. We need to be ready. We're still fighting these saber-toothed tigers today in life when there isn't really any need to. Getting back, making that anger dragon your friend. When that thought comes up, that persisting thought that is just nagging at you, acknowledge it. Thank the dragon. Give that dragon something to work for. The dragon makes a terrible master, but a great servant. It's like your subconscious, right? You tell it. You put in your mind. Your subconscious cannot differentiate between what's vividly imagined and what actually has happened. Holding that picture of what you want vividly in your mind, it tells them, "Oh, okay, if I'm focusing on fear and anger and everyone's out to get me all the time, well, what is the universe thinking that you want? Hey, bring me more of that. Give me more pain." It doesn't mean that it's going to stop, but just how we're framing it is going to have miraculous effects on us. And when it affects us, what does it do? It affects your kids, Nicholas, your wife, your relationships, your business. Give your anger a job to do. Thank it. It's like those monkeys in the monkey mind when we're meditating, right? Acknowledge them. Johnny would talk about, because I still to this day, I have a hard time focusing on the meditation when I do. I'm far better at giving the guided meditation than listening because that monkey mind is going. It's the clouds that are going over. He said, think of all these thoughts that are coming into your mind every second, um, as these thoughts. Think of them as clouds and just allow them to go. Thank them. Thank you. It's those monkeys, the monkey mind, those monkeys that are chattering up in the trees. Thank them. I acknowledge you. Move on and give it a job. So that's another story here. I digress. I apologize about that. We're coming back. We're on question 8. You're going to like this one, and I hope our audience does as well. What are the top 3 things that bring you joy and fulfillment? Go.
Well, for me is when I see I have a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and she's going to be 13 in a couple weeks. When they believe in themselves and they accomplish something and they're able to um, overcome maybe a fear, they learn something new. Obviously, as a 3 and a 5-year-old, the things that come out of their mouth are sometimes like, "Where did that come from? Where did you learn that?" Um, those type of moments where I can watch, for example, watching your child walk for the first time, watching them learn how to swim, things that we can look back in our life, my own life, and I think, oh, I remember when I did that for the first time. My little daughter just accomplished that. Or they were just able to overcome their fear, just being them, right? Just watching them grow. That's a joy for me to be able to watch them grow every single day. Don't get me wrong, there are times when my anger dragon too is like it comes out of nowhere, like, these kids are driving me crazy. But that's for every parent, right? We all go through that. So joy and fulfillment, I would refer to how they are becoming their own person, their own life force, and what they're able to accomplish. Because we all want our children to do great things, and in all actuality, we should want our children to do better and greater things than ourselves, right? To
Amen.
to 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 evolve even farther along than what we could ever imagine, right? Um, so that's where I get my true joy.
I love that. Now, not everyone listening to this is going to have kids. In fact, My wife didn't want to have kids. We know what's going on in this world, and she didn't want to, and that's great. And we have like at one time we had 12 cats because we were cat rescuers, right? Another crazy story. I'm a crazy old cat lady, just like her, and I found it pretty cool. But everyone's going to have different things if they allow themselves. It's like we haven't allowed ourselves to feel joy because it's like something's wrong with that. I would really have a question with yourself, have that talk, and say, well, why? Why is it wrong to love myself? Why is it wrong to allow myself joy? And where I'm going with this is, you figure out what brings you the most joy. That's a message. That's what can help you. If you haven't figured out what your life purpose is, that's certainly an area to focus on. It's something you should allow yourself every day. Even if your joy is your dog, to spend that and to be zen, to be present now, not thinking about, oh man, I got to pay that credit card bill. Oh man, I got to do this with my work. To be in that moment of now, the eternal now, those things that bring you joy. Write a list down. Look at the things that bring you what you appear to be happiness, and then put the most important ones at the top. There's your focus. Those are the things that will add immeasurably to not just your life, but to everybody's. So, great answer as always. All right. Question 9. This is another one I like to do, like when I'm around people. I'm going to say, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say rich people? What do you think about those rich people?
Mm,
I
well,
love the look on your face. I wish our audience could see your face right now.
well, listen. I come from the mindset. Obviously, there are certain people that are rich that worked really hard for that, and they deserve that. Obviously, if you are born with a silver spoon and you are born into wealth, well, you hit the lottery, right? I always say someone who you hit the lottery maybe if you grew up in the western part of the world, or maybe not so much anymore. But if you hit the lottery by being born into a wealthy family, rich people obviously they majority of them, I would assume the majority of them have worked really, really hard to accomplish great things and earn that type of money and living. Obviously, there's some that have scammed and lied along the way, whether or not they're politicians or not, or they know how to grease the skids and work the system and all those kind of things. Um, I don't, to be honest with you, I don't hang around with too many rich people. I'm not going to lie. Um, but listen, I'm sure there are many, many people that are wealthy and rich that actually give back to their communities and give back to various organizations to help others. Are there others that have lied and cheated along the way just to get to where they are? Of course. Let's be real, right? So if I ran to someone who was rich, or being in the restaurant business too, where if I'm working somewhere and I can, if I'm cooking a meal and someone doesn't like their food because they like to be catered to a little bit differently, or they like to look down on someone because they feel like they've made this money, they're wealthy, they're rich, and they have that power over someone that isn't quite as wealthy or well-to-do. That's another thing. But generally, I don't know. I mean, yeah.
Look, you answered it exactly. I was leading the witness, Your Honor. When I talk about riches, money is the first thing that people will think, and everything you said was the kind of stuff that I look for. When I'm talking about riches too, I like to expand the thought is the most important riches are that which we carry within, the riches of our friendship, the riches of the relationships that we have. Those are an amazing thing. But I also want to talk about abundance, and it's the mindset of abundance and changing it around. People say, "Oh, those rich people, they're dirty, that they've stolen their money or whatnot." To try to remove that, because that's what you bring in. Whatever you want to feel about the law of attraction, there's a lot of stuff. Rhonda Byrne did great things about it. I didn't like The Strength of the Secret. I liked her book, The Power, better. But nonetheless, your mindset about riches and abundance has a lot to do with where we are. You say that you don't hang around with rich people. Well, I'll tell you what, one of the great teachers, Tony, I like Kuomas, one of these amazing teachers. He said he used to hang around with millionaires, and that's who he hung around. That's what he had. Once he started hanging around with billionaires, different things happen. So it's your association. It's his wanting, and it's what you ever do with your wealth. That's up to us. I want wealth so that I can give it away, so I can take care of my friends and family. I love the of what I can do with it. I attract it. I want to do it, and so I think of every day what I can do to help somebody's life. When I think about the Red Cross, when I think about all the amazing charities and the nonprofits out there, what are they doing every day? They're asking for money, right? Or they're asking for help so that they can go out and do good things with it. To me, that's a much better, more advantageous mindset about to be rich and to allow yourself to open yourself up to abundance. Take any guilt or shame or anything that's wrong with us over. People are bad. Nah, it's what they do with it. Many have worked extremely hard. I heard one guy say a while back, he goes, I'm the luckiest man I know. The harder I worked, the luckier I became, much like you, my dear friend. So just take a look at your mind. The whole portion of this is take a look at your mindset you have with yourself about your feelings towards that and what you can do with it. Allow it to come into your life. A lot of people are pushing it away. So what are you telling the universe? Hey, it's bad. I don't want it. Give me more pain. Work up. Send me send problems to my car so I've got more bill. It's a mindset. You're right to be rich, and riches are way more than just monetary things. Okay, and for our final question of the day, and there'll be a lot more. This is really just the tip of the iceberg. When we see an iceberg, we know that less than 9% of that iceberg is above water, and that's our mind. What's the rest? The 95%, that's our subconscious. Our subconscious has a lot to do with the quality of life. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
All right. So a lot of these are just to affect, maybe to point your subconscious and give it directions. It makes a terrible, terrible leader, but a great master. You tell it what you want. Give it a job, like your dragons. All right. Are you ready for all these things that we've talked about and all these things that you tell people that you want on a daily basis now, this second, this moment? Are you ready to accept it? You
I
deserve it.
am. I do deserve it, and I am ready for it. And I hope everyone listening to this great podcast, listening to Tom's wisdom as well, are ready to start practicing and questioning everything. I think it's very important. You touched on some amazing topics. You brought up some amazing points and questions. Phenomenal.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Every one of these topics you could go on for days. We talked very little, just a tiny bit about the anger dragon, which was a big part of my life, which thwarted me. We didn't even get into the relationship book, which is incredibly important. If you're listening to this, we have a wonderful page on Facebook. It's a private group called Creating the Relationship of Your Dreams. Asked to join us. We have some of the greatest experts. In fact, if I may call you Nick, Nick is going to be asked to be a expert on there. And these experts, you can ask them questions. They don't have any duties to do, but post wonderful things that they find that people will be benefit from. So that it's a wonderful thing on Facebook, creating the relationship of your dreams. We'd love to have you. Books are available on Amazon.com. You can also go to tomziemann.com, TomZiemann.com. I'm here. I coach people. It's one of the things I love to do, and I love these talks that we're having. NG.
Thank you so much, Tom. Uh, Again, just a pleasure to meet with you today and speak with you, and listen to some of your insight and questions. I think it was very beneficial for myself personally, and all of our listeners in the future too. Thank you so much, Tom. Have a great day.
Namaste.
If you would like to support the podcast, please visit Amazon.com and search Conquering Hill 50 writing prompts for a dream chaser. And also visit Etsy.com and search Conquering Hill for all our gear. Thank you so much.